Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining our new episode of Conversations with Agapè. Today's guest, we have Julia, who is the Associate Director. Today, she will share her insight of the new guidelines for marriage preparation and enrichment provided by the Catechumenal Pathway for Married Life. Everyone will have the opportunity to ask Julia a question during the last 5 to 10 minutes of this session. However, everyone is muted right now. I will give you access to unmute yourself and have that opportunity to do so during that time. Again, Julia, thank you so much for joining, and I will let you take it away.
Great. Thank you so much, Ashley. Well, hello, everyone, wherever you are, and in whatever time zone. And I think that there are participants from around the world. So that's really impressive, an impressive audience. And I'm so happy to have been privileged to be asked by Marriage Prep Online to provide this workshop or this presentation. I presume many of you know about the Catechumenal Pathways, but we'll dive right in to what it's all about and how to apply it really to your pastoral perspectives, whether that's at the diocesan or parish levels. So I entitled this How a Marriage Catechumenate Will Renew the Church from Within, because I truly believe that what the church is asking of us right now for marriages and for the preparation of married couples in the church is going to renew the church from within. I think that this is a crucial first step to a true re-evangelization of our church. So many, if not all of you, of course, are aware of the enormous challenges that we do face as a church on a global level, not just a national one. And the trends do continue to be troubling. We see the commonplace cohabitation before marriage, low marriage rates. To give you one example, since 1970, the marriage rate has declined by almost 60% in the US. High divorce rates and the steady decline of marriages taking place in the Catholic Church. And the church is deeply concerned about the impact of all of these trends because it also impacts the overall health of the church. Okay, I'm going to share with you this study from Communio. According to Communio, the weekly religious attendance for Christian adults was over twice as high if one specific factor was true. The factor is this: if the couple or if the adults had continuously married parents through childhood. So you'll see here on the graph that we're looking at U.S. adults, Catholics, other Christians, but you see the last four bars, the red and pink bars, demonstrate Christians with continuously married parents through childhood, okay? And then on the side, you see a percentage of weekly religious attendance rate, okay? You see how pretty regardless of the age groups, whether that's 18 to 29, 30 to 39, 40 to 49, 50 to 59, more or less, they're all up there hovering around 75% of weekly religious attendance rate, which means that these Christians with continuously married parents, regardless of their age today, continue to attend regular weekly religious services. There's something to be said about that. So the likelihood of attending church weekly will remain rather consistent if your parents are still together in marriage. So Communio highlights this, that Americans, especially younger Americans, are falling away from the faith at alarming rates. And the primary factor behind this mass exodus from religion appears to be what we see here, a collapse in the family structure, which of course begins in marriage. Whereas the reverse is also true. We will continue to see our churches populated by people in the pews on Sunday if they come from strong families with parents who are still continuously married. So what does that tell us? The bottom line is this, that marriage is the most urgent ministry in the church today. There is no other ministry in the church today that is more urgent and more necessary than marriage ministry. So 2 years ago at the World Meeting of Families, the Vatican announced that these trends needed to be reversed with a new comprehensive plan that starts young people on a path to stronger marriages. And that plan involves all of us, but especially all of you who are on this call today, who are watching this webinar, who are walking alongside couples preparing for marriage. But this is more than a plan. It's not just a plan. It's not just a project. It's a new vision of a marriage building church. It's a vision that inspires a mission of renewal, and this by means of evangelization. So this vision is called Catechumenal Pathways for Married Life. And the title, of course, comes from the ancient form of catechesis and formation used for adults seeking baptism. Now, similar to the order of Christian initiation for adults that includes the stages of evangelization, catechesis, purification, and enlightenment, as well as mystagogy, there are also stages and rites presented in this Catechumenal Pathways for Married Life. And the primary goal of this document is to prepare and support married couples in their call to holiness, so that they, in turn, can raise holy families and establish their own domestic church. But this vision of marriage preparation also asks us to walk alongside these couples with renewed intentionality. So we know, too, that formation for marriage does not simply begin when the couple darkens the doors of the church and asks a pastor to be married in his church. It begins in our families, as all vocations do. So for this reason, the first stage of the catechumenal process outlined in this document is actually a pre-catechumenal stage called remote preparation. And remote preparation for marriage requires a village, and our village is what? The church, of course. More specifically, it's our parish community, which means that the whole church is really invited to take an active role in forming young people for their future vocations, whether that's marriage, consecrated life, the priesthood, whatever it may be. We know that it is a call to love. And today, faced with the challenges of a culture that opposes faithful marriage, young people should be encouraged in this stage to think about the deeper questions of what love truly is, the dignity of their sexual personhood, made for communion in the image of God's Trinitarian love, and the sacredness of sex, and what it means as a sincere, total gift of self that is reserved for marriage. Young people should be invited to practice the noble virtue of chastity, the attractiveness of modesty, and the appeal of purity, among other things. And parents warned against the vicious attack on our human dignity in the form of pornography and the deceitful imagery that distorts reality, so ambivalent through social media. And so the bottom line for the remote preparation is this, that we need to support young people to respond to the vocation of marriage. And this is really building a strong foundation upon which those couples who arrive at our churches have at the basis of their request. If young people coming to our parishes ask us for marriage and have these strong foundations, then it makes our job so much easier when it comes to preparing them for their wedding day. And so this is the pre-catechumenal phase. But the next stage is the intermediate phase. But before I go on to that, let me just explain a little bit about the intermediate phase. The church asks us, therefore, to walk intentionally with the young people who do darken the doors of our churches and ask us for marriage in the church. And when a couple asks us for marriage today, chances are they have already decided that there is some benefit, right? There's some benefit to asking for a marriage in the church, even if they're not practicing regularly. And their intentions, although presumably good, do typically need greater clarity, right? So how does this play out in practice? And this is where I'd like to kind of pull in a scenario. This is an imaginary scenario, but based on the reality of the couples that we typically see in our parishes today. So this is the story of Matt and Mary. Okay, let's take Mary. She's raised Catholic. She went to Catholic school, even to a Catholic college. But during college, many of her friends weren't attending Sunday Mass. There was no one to insist on it, so they stopped, and she did too. Matt, however, was baptized Catholic, but his parents never practiced. He received absolutely no religious formation in the home, did not attend Catholic school or anything. But now as an adult, he's more interested to understand what the Catholic faith is about because he wants to be able to provide answers to his children. So if you were to ask them why they want to be married in the church, they say, well, it's what Catholics do. It'll make grandma happy. This is what my parents expect of me, all those things. These intentions are good, but they're not good enough. And they're complying with protocol and practice, but they don't have a real purpose. They don't have a real purpose for getting married in the Catholic Church. How do we help Matt and Mary shift their intentions from good to great? How do we move them away from just simply protocol to a real purpose for getting married in the church? Now, of course, there's no secret sauce, but there are definite steps that can help couples like Matt and Mary prepare for not just a wedding, but a marriage, and not just a contractual marriage, but a covenantal marriage, right? A covenant that is sacramental and that mirrors the love of Christ for his church. So this intermediate step of the process suggests that a few months are devoted to an exploratory phase of getting to know the couple and evaluating their readiness for marriage. Why is that necessary? Well, it's necessary because the couple is also being asked to deepen their baptismal identity as children of God. In other words, the couple's being asked to ground their marriage first and foremost in their Christian identity. And this is pivotal. It's a personalized period, therefore, of getting to know the couple and learning about their own relationship with Christ. So let's play the scenario again. The couple calls Mary's hometown parish, where Father Rick, is the pastor. The receptionist answers the phone, asks that they come in to meet with Father Rick before they set a date. And so the next week, they're in the office with Father Rick, and he asks them the normal questions. Of course, he recognizes Mary from Catholic school, but he hasn't seen her in a while. And he asks about Matt's background. And upon learning that Mary really hasn't been attending Mass regularly and Matt received no faith formation, he asks Matt and then Mary, he says, "Do you know Jesus?" Mary, of course, says, "Well, of course, Father. I did attend Catholic school. Of course, I know who Jesus is." Matt says, "Oh, yes, of course, we celebrate him at Christmas." And Father Rick will nod encouragingly, and then he prods, "Yes, you know who Jesus is. That's who Jesus is, but do you know Jesus? Do you have a personal relationship with him?" is what he's basically asking. And of course, they look confused, maybe a little bit embarrassed. But he immediately asks them, "Are you free tomorrow night?" And of course, he's got the next night, First Friday adoration, say. And so he's inviting them to adoration, spend some moments before Jesus. And of course, although they had planned their date night out, they're like, "Sure, Father, we'll do anything for you." And so he invites them back. And he just says, "Come and see. I want to introduce you or reintroduce you to Jesus in a more personal way." And so what does he do? With that gesture, he's inviting them in a very non-judgmental way to receive more, to receive and experience more than they might have up to that point. So the next night, after 10 minutes of adoration, he's given them some time to spend in the pew, and then he beckons them to the back of the church and explains to them in very simple terms what's happening, that this is Jesus really present in the Eucharist. And he's basically proclaiming the kerygma. And this is a huge part of the Catechumenal Pathways, the kerygma, that proclamation of Jesus Christ. And then after adoration, he introduces Matt and Mary to Jay and Jess. They're a young couple with 2 small children who are very active in the parish. Jay and Jess immediately say, "Excellent, we'd love to see you at Sunday Mass. Come to the 10 a.m. Mass and then join us for brunch afterwards at our house." So immediately there is this relationship that is established just by invitation, right? And this is the beginning of a transformative experience for Matt and Mary, because they're beginning to see a couple who is living the faith actively, dynamically, even with 2 small children, and is just in the messiness of life, the normalcy of life. And that's how things begin to progress. And then Father Rick suggests that Matt begin an Alpha course because he has a lot of religious formation to catch up on. But Mary's going to do it with him because they're rediscovering the faith of their baptism together now. Now, 5 months have passed, and while Matt and Mary are encountering Jesus again in their faith, they're also discerning in a whole new light what their engagement really means as a couple. So they're not just engaged to one another, they're engaged together. They're engaged together as a couple, recommitting themselves to marriage as an engaged couple. And by this time, after meeting Jess and having Jess and Jay and having this experience with another couple, 3 more couples are at the parish asking to be married. And so Father Rick gathers all of these couples together and starts them on the catechumenal journey together, marked by a rite of entry. And what does that rite of entry look like? Well, in the Catechumenal Pathways document, it explains that it can just be at a Sunday Mass. It can include it can be a very brief presentation of all the couples following the Sunday homily. And in this case, we'll say Father Rick presents each couple with a Bible and says a prayer over each one. And then he explains to everyone in the parish that these couples are entering a catechumenal journey which is a period of discernment regarding their choice to get married. And he asks the parish to pray for them. Very simple. But he simply says, please, let's pray. Let's support these couples with our prayers, because they're entering into a really important phase of discernment now, getting ready for their marriage. And so this is the end of the reception phase. This is the end of the intermediate phase. And now all of that was just the precursor to the real catechumenal journey. And the real catechumenal journey now begins with the proximate stage. So that was all like a pre-course. And now the couple is truly committed to, yes, embracing the journey towards marriage, which is a true journey of faith. And it's a revival of a catechesis of Christian initiation into the faith. So a re-experience, in a sense, of all of the sacraments. And in our example, Matt, it means receiving the sacraments for the first time: Holy Eucharist, confirmation, confession, etc. Now, with the help of Agapè or Marriage Prep Online and other programs similar to it, this proximate preparation begins. And this is typically your time of what we would consider as the pre-Cana. It's a time to guide couples to embrace the beauty of sacramental marriage forged by conjugal love. It's a time to really gauge the person's intentions about marriage, their willingness to have children, potential incompatibilities, and of course the expectations and opinions regarding love and married life. And it's also, of course, the time for all the nitty-gritty. Excuse me. All the nitty-gritty means all the practical stuff. So theoretical, finances, communication skills, all the stuff that we typically throw at young people preparing for marriage in like an 8-hour day, on a Saturday, and then give them the certificate and say, you're ready to get married, right? But we have to reevaluate all of that. And so this proximate stage is the time to provide that kind of content. But as important as the what is, it is equally and probably far more important the how. So how are we providing that formation? So here it's asking us to be intentional about forming these couples alongside a mentor couple. Now, at the end of this stage, the couple has ripened their desire to marry within the church, and they're embracing the fullness of their vocation. So in the Catechumenal Pathways document, they also suggest another rite, the rite of betrothal at this point. And so at the end of about 6 months, let's say, Matt and Mary are ready to go through with the rite of betrothal. And that's not to be understood as a marriage. It explains very well in the document that this is just, this is a celebration of their love. And again, a public witness to those around them that they are embarking upon a serious path towards marriage, but in no way to be confused with the marriage itself. Now, the last stage, and this is probably one of the quickest stages, is really the final preparation, because it can be presumed that all of the details around the wedding have already kind of taken place along the way. But only now are we really ready to kind of buckle down and say, okay, what is a liturgy going to look like? What's the reading selections, music selections, and all of that. But the emphasis throughout this whole document is on the spiritual aspect, and that's really important, that we focus on the evangelizing and spiritual aspects of this young couple's life. So by now, if Father Rick asked Matt and Mary, do you know Jesus? Of course, they may, like all of us, recognize that their relationship with Christ still has a long way to go, but nonetheless, they're more confident and say, yes, we're getting to know Jesus, and we're excited to know him better along the path. So at this point, really, couples should become aware that they're not spectators in this, but they're really ministers of the celebration of their marriage, and they're excited to partake in the sacrament together and confer it upon one another as the ministers of the sacrament. And they realize that the wedding is not the end of the journey. So after many months of marriage preparation, during which Matt also received the sacraments of Eucharist, reconciliation, and confirmation, the couple is planning their wedding. And we could say probably that from the day that they met Father Rick to the day of their wedding, about 18 months has passed. So that's a year and a half, at least a good 6 months more than what we typically ask of couples today, or sometimes a whole year more than what some couples are expected prior to their wedding. But the catechumenate is not over. And this is a very important point, that the catechumenate is still not over. The last stage is this third stage, accompaniment during the first few years of married life, because they can be the most difficult that the couple ever experiences. It's that time of transition. It's that time of all new things. And so let's take Matt and Mary. 5 months after their wedding, they notice an announcement in the church bulletin that says that newly married couples are all invited to a date night hosted by the diocese. And so excited to go, they find a babysitter and they meet other couples, or better yet, childcare is provided on site. And they meet with other couples who invite them to join a newly formed group that offers marriage enrichment skills like financial goals, communication skills, liturgical living in the home, and forming your domestic church. They're thrilled to meet these other peers who are, for example, also expecting their first child, so they'll take some birthing classes with them. But most importantly, they have a solid friendship already established with their mentor couple, Jess and Jay, and with other couples who accompanied them in a similar fashion along the way to marriage. Now, all of this said, I realize that this is a very ambitious task, and I've gotten some questions about this and some feedback saying, well, this is completely unrealistic. This is completely overwhelming. How is this possibly going to play out at the diocesan or parish levels? Well, for starters, I would say take one step at a time. It is an overwhelming, at first glance, this is an overwhelming project. This is an overwhelming vision. But let's take one step at a time. I know one diocesan director of marriage and family life who started with the bookends. She started zooming in on the remote preparation and on marriage enrichment, how she's accompanying couples during their first few years of marriage, and really focused a lot of efforts on ensuring that these bookends are really well established and well coordinated, that the diocese and diocesan efforts are really focusing on helping establish solid marriages from the ages of young children, and providing those basics, the foundations for the young people who are in the dating scene, basically, and heading towards marriage. And then ensuring that those marriages that have already taken place are getting the enrichment that they deserve. One actionable step for parish leaders could be this: change your bulletin. Take a look at what is written there. Does your parish bulletin only say, notify the pastor if you're planning on getting married within 6 months of the wedding date? Wrong. Change that. That has to be changed. Instead, it should say couples should notify the parish as soon as they desire marriage. So a little step like that could, of course, result in a lot of other changes along the way. I also hear some arguments about couples will be turned away if I tell them that they're going to have to spend 6, 12, 18 months preparing for marriage. Well, of course, every couple situation is different, and every couple should be treated differently based on their very specific circumstances, right? Some couples will already have many of the basic catechetical foundations that Matt and Mary did not have. But no couple should be rushed through marriage preparation just because their date is settled. We should not be starting from the end date. That has to be scratched. That has to be all reestablished. And instead, let's convey to our couples that it's really in their best interest that they wait. Because it's really a matter of justice. It's a matter of justice to them, because we as a church desire that they receive the sacrament of marriage fully, authentically, and consciously, because it is such a serious matter. And we also want their marriages to thrive. We want them to thrive and succeed and be the foundations of beautiful domestic churches. Just taking a look at the time now. There may also be couples who just refuse to cooperate with an extended timeline. And although that is undesirable, and we don't want couples turning away from the church, yet, unfortunately, that will be the reality. That will be the reality. There will be couples who simply are unwilling to cooperate with certain demands of their time and effort. And certain couples who simply aren't interested, who just won't be interested in really understanding what the church has to say about marriage. But it's important that as a church, we begin to re-examine how we are doing marriage prep to ensure that these couples not only desire what the Catholic Church teaches, but fully embrace it. That they fully embrace it, and they are willing to engage in the conversations about the sacrament of marriage before their wedding day. And also, let's not forget that if the couple does leave that day and says, "No, Father Rick, that's way too much time. We already booked the hall. It was expensive. We already put down the deposit, which was like, already required a loan. We can't possibly change things. The date is established. We've thrown money down on the table, and we can't walk away from that. If they're unwilling to work with the pastor, there are some pastoral strategies, of that can be depended on to possibly reduce the time, the effort necessary for that couple. But again, it would be in their best interests to understand the importance of taking their time and also really embracing the beauty and the depth of a sacramental marriage and all that conveys. And so the other thing is that the pastor should make clear that the couple is always invited back, that this is not the end, that the couple should always be invited back to liturgies on a continual basis, but especially if they do get married elsewhere, that they remember that this is their parish. They remember that they have a home here in the parish, and that especially with the birth of children, that they come back to those, the sacraments. And that is a great on-ramp towards a possible conversation again about the importance of their marriage, and then possibly opening the discussion about convalidation. So that door is not completely closed when a couple walks out and says, "No, Father, we're not going to go through the whole 12-month hoops, all the hoops of 12-month delay in getting married." You just never know. There may be another opportunity to get that couple back and help them reconsider. So I know that the audience today comes from different backgrounds, whether that's diocesan, parish, maybe different ministries, Hispanic ministry, maybe evangelization. I would just say use the data to your advantage. Show the importance of this ministry and how urgent it is for the evangelization of our church today, and how capable it is of changing things around for our church. It's really crucial, and I believe that although the implementation of a vision like this is going to take generations, I believe that if we take one step at a time, something will change, and it will really be for the best interests of the church and the best interests of our marriages and families. So thank you, Agapè Marriage Online,
Yeah,
for this opportunity.
thank you, Julia, and thank you so much. I know it was quick, but it was a great overview, and so we really appreciate it. We have about 4 minutes left before we get cut off. So I'm going to unmute everyone. You have about 2 minutes for open discussion with Julia. But Julia, if people want to connect with you, how do they reach you?
Oh, absolutely. Right there. That's the best.
Perfect. Send you an email. That's great. All right, so if anyone is interested in asking a question, all you have to do on your side is click the microphone to unmute yourself. Otherwise, we will end today's session a little bit early. Perfect. If there's no questions, that means you were completely clear, so I love that. Well, again, thank you everyone for joining today. And thank you so much, Julia. Thank you for all you're doing for the USCCB. And then again, thank you for doing this for Agapè Catholic Ministries. We will see everyone next time on our next episode of Conversations with Agapè. Thanks for joining. Bye.